Hello and welcome to Security Scan. I am Vishal Dahiya, and this week we will discuss China's increasing presence in the Indian Ocean region. The Indian Ocean has become the new global center for trade and energy flows, accounting for half of world's container traffic and 70% of petroleum shipments. This has made the Indian Ocean region a potential arena for strategic competition between India and China. In fact, the competition between India and China in this region is heating up in the recent past, with both regional powers making moves to exert influence in the domain through development of ports and navy patrols. The Chinese doctrine of string of pearls, which was coined in 2005, is aimed at expanding China's footprint in the Indian Ocean region by allowing its navy to develop bases and have access to facilities across the northern Indian Ocean. China's increasing forays into the Indian Ocean has brought India's maritime policy back in focus. India continues to have a significant presence in critical sea lanes in the Indian Ocean. In the recent past, India has reached out to the Indian Ocean littoral states by allocating more resources for bilateral and multilateral naval exercises and finalizing the development of 2 islands for Indian military bases in the smaller but strategically located countries like Mauritius and Seychelles. So, what are the reasons behind China's increasing presence in the Indian Ocean region, and what is India's strategy to counter China's move? For a detailed discussion on this, today we have with us a distinguished panel of guests in the studio. Let me introduce them to you, starting with Mr. Jaidev Ranade, who is with us in the studio, the president of Center for China Analysis and Strategy. We also have with us former Commodore Abhijit Singh, the head of Maritime Policy Initiative ORF, and we have with us Mr. Harsh V. Pant, a strategic expert. Welcome all of you to Rajya Sabha TV studio. Let me begin with you, Mr. Ranade. If you could put this in perspective for us. This is not a new thing which is happening, as in China, pressing into the Indian Ocean region. And if you look at the entire Indo-Pacific, then it looks like a part of the larger plan they have. What exactly is happening in the Indian Ocean region as of now?
You're quite right, it's not new. Actually, the first moves by China into the Indian Ocean were made in 2007, end of 2007. And since then, things have accelerated. And that is linked directly with the growth of the Chinese economy and the leadership's decision to become more assertive in carving out their areas of strategic interest. So that's what's happening. They have ramped up the production of ships. They're adding 1 missile frigate every 3 weeks to the Navy. They are at the moment constructing the 4th aircraft carrier. And their plan is by 2030 to have at least 315 surface warships and 100 submarines. Now, obviously, there is a plan behind this whole thing. They have set up Djibouti, that is the first offshore base. They are planning 16 more, which are in different stages along the western coast of Africa. And here in the area closer to us, they already have a port in Hambantota. They have moved into the Maldives, which is, I think, already becoming a kind of a flashpoint. We saw that very recently.
Yeah, the recent
yes.
inputs which were coming.
And they're eyeing the Seychelles. So we see their presence really spreading out. And one of the main drivers is China's image of itself as a major world power, something which will rival, if not surpass, the United States. So I think that is the template that we will see. And particularly now, with Xi Jinping having ensured that he can continue for as long as he wants, his pet projects of the Maritime Silk Route and Belt and Road will now get even a greater impetus.
Greater impetus. And first, let me bring in Abhijit on this. Abhijit, are we doing enough? As in, is India doing enough? Because if you look at the response from India's side on this entire issue, then the kind of exercises which are being undertaken by Indian Navy, obviously in addition to bilateral agreements which we are having with these littoral states, a figure which I was looking at, in addition to 7 overseas deployment and OTS and EZs which we had in 2014, the number has so far doubled. As in, Indian Navy is trying to increase its presence in the region. But is that enough?
I don't think it's fair to compare the Indian Navy with the Chinese Navy or to reach a conclusion that India should begin to counter the Chinese Navy in the Indian Ocean region. The important fact is to realize that China now sees itself as a world power. Since 2012 and the 18th Party Congress, the discussion in China really has been about China's rights and interests. So what China is now saying that we earlier used to have something that they called an offshore protection strategy. But we are now going to have a presence in the open seas, which means that the broader Western Pacific, the Indian Ocean region, and they say that this is about protecting their sea lanes. So in the manner of any other world power, China is going to be present in the Indian Ocean region. We are going to have to live with greater Chinese presence in the Indian Ocean region. We also have to sort of realize that this is a very smart strategy that has created an organic need for Chinese naval forces in the Indian Ocean. There are these projects that the Chinese have undertaken under the Belt and Road Initiative. They're creating these little pearls, call them dual-use facilities, in which there will be greater Chinese naval ships, maybe even submarines that will be there in times to come. The reason India might find it in a strategic or even an operational sense to counter the Chinese in this space is because a lot of regional states actually find China's presence in the Indian Ocean region to be useful, which is why the anti-piracy deployments of China have grown in strength. So I think we're in a difficult position when we are trying to maintain our preeminence. We want to be seen as a regional security provider, but we can't stop this ingress that is happening from the east, in which Chinese are sort of filling in all of these gaps, these blank spaces in the Indian Ocean region.
Okay, let me bring in Professor Pant on this. Professor Pant, if you look at the entire situation and what Mr. Ranade and Mr. Abhijit has pointed out, what we are trying to understand here is that this increasing presence of China vis-a-vis India's maritime policy and the kind of steps which Indian establishment is taking, are they matching each other? Or as I was asking Abhijit as well, and he was saying that it's not going to be fair to compare Indian and Chinese Navy, but can we compare the kind of steps or the outreach steps which India is taking and which China is doing in the region?
Certainly, I think to a certain extent, all states and especially major powers or states who view themselves as major powers react to what others do. So what is called classic security dilemma as to Chinese growing presence in Indian Ocean has caused certain consternation amongst Indian policymakers that look, this is going to be very difficult for India in the coming years. But part of the problem has also been that our own approach has been lackadaisical. I remember the discussion on string of pearls, and one of our former national security advisors in a public platform said, no, there is no string of pearls happening. There are no bases there. China will not come up with these bases. We often come up with excuses as to what China might be doing. And I think not to understand the logic of great power politics, that China is a great power in the making, at least it views itself as that. So it will progress accordingly. Its presence in the Indian Ocean is part of, I think, as both of my colleagues here have pointed out, that is part of that dynamic. So I think we should have been better prepared. Now what we are witnessing in Maldives, for example, or what we are witnessing in Sri Lanka, is something that we should have been aware if we were assessing properly, mapping out properly Chinese strategy. And it was very evident for a long time. It is not that today suddenly China is in the Indian Ocean. China's strategy was very clear. We don't want to make India, or we don't want to see India as a preeminent power in the Indian Ocean, is something that they had articulated in 1990s. So from that, I think to find ourselves in a situation where we are even struggling with a country like Maldives, I think is patently unfair to some of our strategic ambitions and aspirations that we have for ourselves in Indian Ocean.
Okay, you brought in the Maldives and Seychelles. Let's move to them one by one. Mr. Ranade, on Maldives specifically, although to an extent what Professor Pant is pointing out might have a value, but then on the other end, in the position which we are right now with Maldives, is there some sort of a way out of this, although we are also trying to make moves and counter moves as well? What exactly can we go ahead and do? Because that itself is a very important pack of islands as far as Indian Ocean region is concerned.
What you said is absolutely correct. In fact, I'd like to pick up on 2 points that were made by both the panelists here. The first is, and I think Mr. Pant referred to it, is about the strategic space. Maldives is very much part of our strategic space. And what we are witnessing, or what we have witnessed in the last few days, is China actually staking its claim on it and then warning us against trying to move in and protect our own strategic space. So in other words, what they're trying to say is that this area, we are the dominant power, and without our say so, we're not going to let you get anywhere. Now, I think that's a very unhealthy precedent as far as we are concerned, because it can be applied to other areas too. The second thing, I quite agree with Commodore Abhishek saying that it's not a question of matching the Chinese dollar for dollar or ship to ship. But then there have to be other methods that we have to look at. And here I would say strengthening of the Andamans and Lakshadweep are the two things that we should be doing. After all, both are God-given assets, if I may say, assets that the British didn't want to hand over to us at the time of independence because they understood its importance. So these are the areas where we must move in. This tri-command that we have in the Andamans, I mean, I don't think it's effective at all. What you need is a Navy and an Air Force, which are very strongly deployed there with long-range capabilities. You need radar coverage of the whole area. Similarly, in Lakshadweep, we have Lakshadweep right there. We are looking ahead to other places. So we need to develop that. But let me just come to Maldives for a minute. I think we've been seeing a drift in the Maldives for some years, including the abrupt manner in which they threw out GMR from constructing that airport. And I think that is the time when we need to have stepped in and told the Maldives government what our red lines are. After all, you know, it's not a good idea to, you know, look for good conduct certificates from everyone. You're not going to get it. No major power gets it. So we have to understand that sometimes we have to take a tough stance. And I think with Maldives, we need to have done it. If not, then at least let us start now, telling them exactly where our interests are. And they are a small power. I'm sure they're sensitive. They themselves are saying that they want to keep good relations with both. Let's make it clear to them.
Okay, and obviously China is not going to let go of its interests because Maldives is very crucial to them as well. Let me bring in Commodore Abhijit on this. If you look at the Maldives situation, as Mr. Ranade was pointing out, that we need to spell out clearly as to what our concerns are and get them addressed. In case here, when we are talking about Maldives, it is really important for us as well because it is as much strategically important for us as it is for China.
That's absolutely right. Actually, Maldives is a very interesting case study. If you look at what's happened in Maldives, it basically points to two things. One is that India faces a predicament, and the predicament that is sharpening over a period of time, which is that our neighborhood, the small countries in our neighborhood, think they have other options than India. And in a sense, India's strategic space in its own backyard has shrunk. We are going to see this get worse as China continues to, you know, develop its relations with this. The second, I think, dilemma for us would be a pointer really is that as China becomes more aggressive in this region, we will have to come up with a counter strategy that really works on the ground. The big question for me is whether intervention should have happened in Maldives or not. And I would say that the first 48 hours were crucial. If at all we had to go in and do something, it should have been done in the first 48 hours. Now that we haven't done it, our options are now limited severely. But in this space, again, we can do. I think my prescription for this would be we've got to have more maritime presence in the waters near Maldives. And second, coercive diplomacy. A combination of power projection and hard diplomacy might get in the results that we need. But I don't think now is the time for us to send in the forces.
Professor Pant, other littoral states, if you look at the Indian Ocean region, we haven't done very badly on those aspects. Rather, much important steps which we have taken, be it preparing for bases in Mauritius and Seychelles, very strategically located, and increasing cooperation with them, bringing them on that platform, and that naval exercise which is due as well. So we are taking those steps.
Yes, I think we have to. I think there is certainly, as I think both the panelists have talked about, there is a growing strategic competition emerging between China and India had to stand up and it has to do certain things to be countered. So I think that is something that we are doing. I hope it is not too late. But I think what is interesting is that the smaller states themselves have certain agency. So as Abhijit was pointing out, it's not as if they are they only now look to India as the great security provider. They think they have options, and that's because again China's profile has risen. So I think we have to match up to that to a certain extent by offering them something that is different from China, which is I think which particularly applies in the developmental sphere where Chinese are coming in with a lot of money, whether it's Maritime Silk Road or BRI. Now both of these projects are ridden with problems, and many of the countries who are experiencing this themselves find that they are either trapped in what is called debt trap diplomacy.
Sri Lanka is
one case. So I think we have to counter that by offering a normative alternative, where perhaps our developmental assistance, our approach to infrastructure, our approach to connectivity is defined as quite substantively different from the Chinese approach, and in that sense we can carve out a space for ourselves, because I'm afraid it's going to be very difficult for India, given and again Maldives is important because it's going to send out certain signals. So why would a Sheikh Hasina or why would a Sirisena in Sri Lanka believe in India when it would find that our allies in Maldives are beseeching India to do something and India is waiting and watching? So I think those are questions that we have to figure out as to what impact this is going to have on other of our states in the littoral and our allies in those littorals who at least look to India as as an important actor in the region.
Okay, we will have to figure out ways to go ahead and reach out more to them. Let me bring in Mr. Ranade on this. Mr. Ranade, as Professor Pant was pointing out, Sri Lanka's case, just like Maldives, Sri Lanka's case also can act as an example for other little states. If you look at the Chinese influence, the way Sri Lanka has, ultimately found out that they are in a debt trap right now. So we can make use of that particular situation to push in more and to, bring them on board.
To a limited extent, because basically what you'll be doing is propagandizing Chinese failures, but not offering a prescription of your own. So we have to actually
go within prescription.
Yeah, we have to go and tell them, what we can offer. But here, let me underline that the real problem for us is the Chinese and their policies. And during the time the Maldives crisis was taking place, we had this situation where the new pro-Beijing Prime Minister of Nepal, he came out with, in fact, I would say almost incendiary statements as far as we are concerned, or at least ones that should cause us worry, when he spoke about reviewing the India-Nepal agreement. And he also said that why should, Nepalese troops serve in the Indian Army? So these are all obviously, provoked by someone, prompted by someone, and that is certainly the Chinese. So when I talked about strategic space, that is the area that I would look at. So I would say that we need a mixture of both. We need to tell them what the red lines are. We also need to ensure that promised assistance actually materializes in those countries, and it doesn't remain an agreement on paper as normally what happens. And third, we have to deliver them projects which are of quality and not be niggardly when it comes to expenditure. If we feel that something has to be delivered quickly, it doesn't matter if we don't go in for getting their funds for it, we put the money in on our own. I think these are the methods that we will have to adopt.
Okay, we will have to push more into it and bring more, a strategic perspective and solutions to that as well. Commander Abhijit, if there's one aspect which seems to be strengthening India's efforts, and that is if you look at 2015 maritime policy, then the term net security provider, that is something which is being utilized by India to go ahead and send a message across that we are there for you and you will have to protect our concerns, strategic concerns specifically. Is that paying off?
That is to a limited extent paying off. But let me just point out one thing. I think there is in some ways a sort of obsession in India's strategic circles as also in the Indian Navy with just protecting our space in the Indian Ocean region. I think if China has to really be countered in the Indian Ocean space, we have to make our presence felt in the South China Sea, in the Western Pacific, because that is China's backyard. And China is most sensitive to what activity happens in that space. So we will be in defensive mode if we keep thinking of countering Chinese presence in the Indian Ocean region. For us to do is to have a real, honest to goodness Indo-Pacific strategy in which we deploy much more on a
cohesive policy.
A cohesive policy that works also in the Pacific for China to realize that we have interest in that part of the world. But the other thing of importance is this, that the Chinese really seem to have overestimated their capability to finance the One Belt, One Road. There is increasing evidence of the fact that a lot of Chinese banks are under great stress. These Chinese companies, state-owned companies that are that have undertaken all of these projects now realize that they themselves they've created these bad assets and are hugely in debt. So I think the message for India is to come up with an alternate model, as Harsh was rightly mentioning. And I think that alternate model can quite be the Asia-Africa growth corridor that we are doing with the Japanese. And one of the things that is very interesting about that project is that this is people-centric. It's really not about creating infrastructure. It's just about looking for ways in which you can build capacity, work together, the environment, all of that, and then wait for some suggestions to come from the local communities and then work towards that. So that's a more organic, it's a more coherent and cohesive model. So I would say that the two things that India must do really well is one, on the maritime operations front, yes, be the first responder in the Indian Ocean region, but also expand your presence to the Pacific and be in China's backyard. And second, look for an alternate model that is going to work in the region. China's One Belt, One Road, I think, is trying to bring together economic geographies that are inherently incompatible. And in a sense, in a few years, China will begin to see some failure happen on that front. So hold the line there, look for an alternate model, expand your maritime operations, but don't get into a one-to-one fight with China.
Okay. Professor Pant, the concluding comments from you on the way forward from here, because where do we move from here? There are several options, there are several ways, as Commodore Abhijit and Mr. Ranade has also pointed out. It requires a push on all aspects, not only a single one, as in both maritime policy, alternative model, going ahead with more pacts with littoral states, and also looking back in the South China Sea also.
I think absolutely. I think it requires a more cohesive approach and more comprehensive approach in many ways. And I think a lot of our energy these days is spent on arguing that India is a global power. But I think the first step should be taken in the neighborhood, and we have to first deliver on our commitments, and that is very important, because a lot of the concern that these countries have is that India does not deliver, under-delivers, overcommits, under-delivers. And I think that's a very sad situation to be in, because if you're not being able to commit the kind of commitments.
But that's been countered, as Commodore Abhijit pointed out, that Chinese companies and banks are being under severe stress, and countries like Sri Lanka now finding out that they're in a huge debt trap. So that's taken care of.
Well, they say that, but Hambantota has still gone to the Chinese, hasn't it? So I think that the issue there is that they have the scale and scope of Chinese ambitions, and the resources is huge. We cannot match them. So I think certainly we have to, I think one of the good things that the government has done, for example, is to make sure that we will not have any more treaties, any more MOUs. We will first finish those projects that are in the pipeline, and that's, I think, a remarkable thing to be done. But also, I think expanding India's footprint towards, as I think Abhijit rightly pointed out, the larger Indo-Pacific strategy has to be enunciated, that it can't simply be about Indian Ocean. India has to be looking at China as a global power and reacting accordingly. You can't, and so almost, constantly being on the defensive as far as Chinese are concerned will not work, because they haven't been defensive at all. They have articulated their ambitions very openly. It's time for India to do that and to put some meat to the bones of what India wants to do with its neighborhood, as well as with certain other countries which are strategic and where India wants to have a larger stake in the coming years.
Okay, Mr. Ranade, before we bring this to an end, do you agree what Professor Pant is pointing out? These are the ways which we can move ahead with?
Yes, absolutely. I think those are the ways that we need to go. And I think, as Commodore Abhijit Singh pointed out, we need to really make our presence felt in the Western Pacific, in the South China Sea, and we've got ready-made paths we should develop, namely the relationship with Vietnam. Let's strengthen that. Let's build up a relationship with Japan, even make it stronger, and go in for a lot more of ship visits and joint patrolling. I think that's one of the ways in just indicating to them that we have an interest here and we will retain a presence.
Okay, so clearly it looks like that as far as Indian Ocean region is concerned, China is continuing and is likely to continue with its efforts to increase its presence in this particular domain. But as our panelists were pointing out, Indian Ocean region cannot be seen in isolation. It will have to be worked and acted upon in agreement or in tandem with India's steps in South China Sea, Indo-Pacific, as well as other steps. India and Indian establishment will have to come out with an alternative model for development in littoral states, its friendly and neighborhood countries, and will also have to push through the initiatives which have been taken in the maritime policy. We'll come back next week with a different topic and different set of guests. Till then, keep watching Rajya Sabha Television.